What's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with ScoopDuck On3, coming to you on Wednesday, April the 30th, 2025. It's looking a little gloomy here in Long Beach, but I'm not sure if we're going to get any rain or not. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. If you guys know me, you know I love the rain. One of my favorite things about the Pacific Northwest from my years up there. But we got some recruiting to talk about, maybe some Duck football sprinkled in there as well. And joining me is ScoopDuck owner and publisher Justin Hopkins. J Hop, how are you? Good morning.
Morning. Yeah. I'm good. I'm back obviously in my normal habitat, if you will, no longer with the picturesque background, but hopefully a more stable internet connection as well. And yeah, I think you and I are both kind of in the same spot where maybe some of our listeners are. It's obviously we're recording right after the On3 and Rivals merger news or whatever you want to call it, but we'll just call it
something like that.
acquisition, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, kind of an interesting thing. And just, we don't have any answers to give. I wish we did. I don't know what it means. I can't imagine it's a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. And it's only a good thing. And it's just another thing that adds more value to our members, our current members, people that want to sign up. I just don't know where you can get, what you're getting for $12, that ScoopDuck On3 and now Rivals is going to be able to give you. It's pretty unmatched.
It's huge. It's huge. I mean, that news was definitely the biggest story of the day. I think bigger than any recruiting story that you're going to see coming out. And is just another indication of the vision that Shannon Terry has for On3 and just continuing to grow and continuing to make On3 the place to be for your high school football and college football coverage. And it expands to more than just that, beyond just football. I mean, you got basketball, which is growing with guys like Jamie Shaw and Joe Tipton, and then any of the great folks that may be joining the fold. Who knows? Yeah. So it remains to be seen kind of what this really means, but I only see it as a massive positive.
Yeah, I don't see any downside here. It didn't cost me anything. Doesn't cost you anything. I think it might have cost Shannon a few dollars, but that's not my problem. So no, I think it'll be great. I'm excited about it. I think ScoopDuck members should be excited about it too, because there's no drawback here. And I know you and I talked just a few minutes before. Just I think there's going to be some things that really benefit us positively out of it. Including, like rankings and camps and things of that nature that folks probably aren't thinking about today. So just cool. And I think it's cool for Shannon, right? I mean, that's where he started, right? That's kind of how he got, going on what he's doing now. And I never thought that Shannon started On3 to sell On3 like he's done with the others. I think this was always going to be his last hurrah, but I think it's kind of fun, like to bring it full circle for him. Your first venture, now with your last venture, you're bringing them both together. And who knows what it means in the end. But I think if you're Shannon, you obviously got to be pretty excited, because I think those are, two of his biggest labor of loves, if you will.
Of course. Yeah, this is the first time that I've had the chance to work with Shannon. Now that I've been at On3 for just over a year now, just past my 1-year anniversary with ScoopDuck and On3. So super stoked about that. But how about we talk about some recruiting, Justin? Because I think we got a lot to kind of dive into here. The Ducks obviously hosted a pretty solid group for their spring game. It wasn't a group that was dominated by like a ton of heavy hitters in 2026. You had some really good 2027s, even one of the most hyped up 2028s from Southern California was on campus. And we've got a bunch of great updates up on the site that you guys should definitely check out if you haven't already. Just a reminder, you can check us out for a week for just $1. So come and see us at scoopduck.com if you haven't already. Engage with thousands of other Duck fans in our message board community, and just have a great time talking Ducks, because that's what we do every single day. Let's start off with the biggest name that was on campus, Justin. That is, of course, the #1 overall recruit in the country in Nixa, Missouri offensive tackle Jackson Cantwell. And he has been probably the most discussed recruit in the Oregon circles, in the Oregon community, because he is going to be coming off the board on May 13th. And this is one that's had a lot of twists and turns. He had originally set a commitment date after his official visit to Oregon, the only official visit that it looks like he's going to be taking. But now he's since added an unofficial visit to Georgia, and he'll be committing just 3 days after he's on campus with Kirby Smart and company in Athens. So I'll get into a little bit of what I got from my interview with him in a bit, but just what's your kind of pulse on where things are at right now?
Yeah, a lot of back and forth in this one, right? I mean, obviously, kind of out of nowhere, if we just dial it back just a few weeks, Cantwell all of a sudden, I've seen enough. I'm ready to make my decision. All signs pointed to Miami, right? That seemed to be, kind of the team to beat at that point. Then, not long after that sets the commitment date, for what would have been today, April 30th. He would have technically committed today if he'd stuck with the original. And then, fast forward right off of that, and you wiggle in the Oregon official visit just days before what that original commitment date of April 30th was. So then you start thinking Oregon. And now, he pushed back a commitment, takes the visit to Oregon, pushes back the commitment date, sneaks in another Georgia visit in between there. And I don't know, is Georgia the team to beat now? It seems as though that's kind of the case, but not totally. So a lot of twists and turns here. I mean, the crazy part is if we just look at it from one end to the other, a few weeks ago, going to make my commitment, Miami seems like the strong favorite. And now here we are just a couple weeks later, move the commitment, and it seems like Georgia might be the team to beat now, and Miami might be third in the equation. So, tough to say. I know Ohio State's also in the mix, but seems like they're chasing the other three schools. So I don't know. It's one Dan Lanning would love to have. I know that's a great player. This is a immediate plug and play left tackle for you as a freshman. You don't typically love to start true freshmen at left tackle, but I think this is the kind of kid that you do and build around and take your lumps when they come. And I don't know. I know Lanning won't let him go easily, but I'm having a real tough time just getting, too confident in Oregon's chances at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not ready to put an Oregon prediction in. It definitely feels like Oregon helped themselves on this official visit, and you'd expect that, right? I mean, how we don't hear of visits going poorly. They only usually help. I mean, the way that recruiting goes nowadays, it's recruit visits X school, and then X school is trending, or they have made a move. So all of these recruits to some degree are very impressionable, which makes it harder to do our jobs and peg down where they're ultimately going to end up to play their college football. But one of the interesting quotes that I got from Cantwell on his visit, kind of just, I don't know, made me a little bit intrigued when I was talking about what was going on in the visit and the conversations, like what was different. The quote that I got here is, there were a few things we talked about in terms of development and how they see me fitting in long term. I won't get into the details, but it was helpful. And maybe that is along the lines of something like, hey, we see you as a plug and play guy, someone that can see the field right away. You never want to promise playing time. I feel like it gets a little bit murky when things like that happen. But Oregon hasn't started a true freshman at left tackle since Penei Sewell, if memory serves, Justin. So I think if we're able to glean anything from it, it's that Oregon views Cantwell as a guy on that level. Granted that Penei Sewell was at Oregon under Mario Cristobal and not Dan Lanning, but I think we can kind of make a little bit of a comparison there. And then another thing that I think could help Oregon's chances here, the Missouri connection, obviously. He's spoken incredibly highly of Lanning, said it's almost his favorite coach or the one that he has the best relationship with, something along those lines, is the law firm. Just Oregon's dedication to offensive line and offensive line development. Alik Terry's done a tremendous job since he's been at Oregon. So I too am with you. I still think Georgia probably leads. But I think that they're right there in the thick of it. And this one's not over just yet. We got just under 2 weeks. Maybe it's 2 weeks from today, actually. But I don't know. I never say never. And I'm still going to give Dan Lanning and the Ducks a shot here.
It's pretty telling that really there's been no predictions made on Cantwell by not just by you and me, but by Wilt Fong and Chad Simmons and even the Georgia insiders for the large part. So I think there was one lone Miami pick.
Wilt Fong has his on Georgia. I
believe. He did just do one, huh? That's right. Yeah, he did it just before he visited Oregon too. So which I'm not picking on Wilt Fong, but it's an interesting decision to make for sure. So yeah, I don't know. Again, this thing has changed so much in the last 2 weeks, and we still basically have 2 more weeks to go. It's going to continue to change. So yeah, you're going to need him to take that Georgia visit. You would love for the Georgia visit to suck, but that's pretty unlikely. Snackson says hi. And then, we do know that Oregon will be doing in-home visits, ahead of his decision. So it'll be interesting to see what Dan Lanning and Alik Terry, and I'm going to assume Will Stein, at least those 3 guys. Hey, I'm recording, Snackson. At least what those 3 guys end up doing, on the in-home visits and ahead of that decision. So I think there's still a lot of twists and turns left.
It's pretty insane that 2 weeks feels like a lifetime in recruiting now, especially with recruits' ability to take visits midweek in some instances, which we saw a lot of with guys on spring break. So I'm with you. I think it's not looking amazing for Oregon right now, but things could change. And we know that Oregon's also recruiting Emmanuel Ahianacho incredibly hard, and offensive line is at the forefront with Cody Green flipping to Washington. So we'll see what happens there. I'm going to be interested to see what his ultimate decision is. Another guy that was on campus and is maybe a little bit more of a positive update for Oregon is 5-star cornerback Brandon Arrington Jr. out of Spring Valley, California, Mount Miguel High School, the number 1 cornerback in the On3 industry ranking. Took another trip to Oregon for the spring game, and the return was really positive, just glowing in the update from Chad Simmons. And I think he was saying it was like the best spring game that he had been to. Again, a guy who's very, very impressionable. But the biggest thing really, Justin, that makes me confident in where Oregon stands right now with Arrington is that he set a commitment date for July 5th, really immediately after wrapping up this most recent trip to Eugene. And he has an updated group of finalists. You got Oregon, USC, Alabama, Penn State, and Texas A&M all in contention for one of the absolute best in California. And I think that Oregon gets the last official visit, which bodes well. I don't think it maybe carries as much weight as it has in the past, but I think it's still a net positive in Oregon's chances here. And I said it yesterday on the boards. I feel like if I had to, I'm not ready to make a prediction, but the way I see it right now, I think that Davon Benjamin and Brandon Arrington are looking like the most likely cornerbacks to end up at Oregon right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair statement because obviously all the signs right now point to Oregon being in great shape with Arrington. I think Oregon has been the team to beat for Benjamin for quite some time now, and I just think that, they've prioritized him over a lot of others. What I like, one thing I want to point out, Brandon Arrington's a 5-star athlete, right? This kid's an elite level athlete. If you're just grading him as a defensive back alone, I don't know that he qualifies into that 5-star category yet because he's still a little bit raw and needs to, learn some nuances of the position. But again, he's a 5-star athlete, and this is a kid that Oregon's in a position now with younger defensive backs currently on the roster that you can bring in Arrington and redshirt him that first year, which means he still can play 4 games. It doesn't mean he doesn't play. And develop him that first year. All of a sudden, maybe you're looking at a redshirt freshman that second year that's gotten that year of college training and probably learned to play a defensive back position a lot better. And you're looking at a high ceiling kind of a guy. So makes a lot of sense for Oregon here to take Arrington. I did see fans say, "Oh, I just don't think he's that good of a DB." He just doesn't know the position as well as others that play it full time yet. But you look at the athletic traits, you look at the length, you look at all these things that this kid has athletically. And if you can, just basically get him to understand the position better, you're looking at an elite level player at a very key position on the roster.
Another thing I really like about Arrington is just the swagger and confidence that he carries himself with, whether it's on the football field or on the track as an elite level sprinter. This is a guy who just wants to win. And when I got to see him for the first time, when I made the trip down to the San Diego area, I mean, just about 6'3", 180 pounds or so. And this dude's hands like go down to his knees, which is just like crazy. Just, super lengthy player. that I really feel like is an ideal fit for the type of corners that you see Dan Lanning recruiting and on the roster right now. But yeah, I liked your point. It's not like a situation where he has to play right away. If he does end up at Oregon, and Rashad Wadood and Chris Hampton have done a really good job. I think this year is going to be an awesome indication of where they're at with the development of some of these really, really talented younger guys that have been in Eugene for what feels like a while, but maybe it's just one season. So I know Oregon likes where they stand, and you got to like getting the last shot. So we'll see what happens with Brandon Arrington, who's just another face of Oregon's recruiting efforts in California and in Southern California, an area that's become just increasingly difficult or just more highly contested by top teams, with obviously USC also in the mix, and then A&M's made a pretty strong push into SoCal as well. So this will be a fun one to watch until the very end, I think.
Yeah, he's kept his cards pretty close to his vest, but I think we're starting to get a better feel now. Really wouldn't surprise me. I kind of feel like this one's going to shape up between Oregon and Bama in the end. I know Alabama's made a really strong impression early on, Texas A&M at times. USC's kind of always been there. I think they've turned it up here late, but I don't know that they're quite a serious threat here. Again, I kind of feel like this one might be Oregon versus Bama. And, I do like that this is a West Coast kid with some West Coast schools in his final mix there, because it tells me that, they are looking at staying out West and not just wanting to go to the SEC because it's the SEC. And let's face it, the Big Ten is definitely catching the SEC in terms of its, brand and showcasing and quality of teams and getting guys to the league. So I think, for Oregon, that's a great thing overall, just looking at the conference affiliation and what Oregon's able to present there. Obviously, USC is able to do the same, being in the Big Ten as well.
Let's take a step back here now, Justin, and just zoom out a little bit. I want to just kind of get your take on where things are at right now with Oregon recruiting broadly, because they have the number 7 class in the updated On3 rankings, just 7 commitments right now. But we can go wherever you want with this. We can talk about some more visitors, or I know you had a piece that you wrote on ScoopDuck earlier today that kind of was a little bit of a pulse check, right? Just like, hey, Duck fans, this is kind of where we're at. So I'll just toss it over to you.
Yeah, I think I think continued education from you and I and others is one of the keys to what we do at ScoopDuck. It's not just, hey, here's a recruiting update, here's this guy's top 5. We want to continue to educate our readers and stuff on timelines. Like, okay, hey, look, yeah, it hasn't been the best spring. I mean, we're acknowledging that, but we're also acknowledging that we're not panicking, because really Dan Lanning's never had a great spring since he's been at Oregon. And so, a couple of things that I pointed out in that update. First, for starters, and a big thing that we're not talking about, Oregon's no longer in rebuild mode. And I shouldn't say, I feel like rebuild mode was the wrong way to put it, but it was the only thing I could think of. Because if you look at what Dan Lanning's been doing, it's been a lot of transfer portal additions, right? He's always had an addition in the spring transfer portal window. This is the first year he hasn't done that. Okay. And I don't think they will. I don't think Oregon's going to add anyone. No spring. So to me, it's a testament that he sees what kind of a team he's got here, the level of talent, the fact that there's very few holes. And that translates into recruiting, right? It's no longer a project or a rebuild, or we need 30 guys. If they end up signing 30 guys in this class, it's because they're all highly ranked 5 and 4 stars that want to come to Oregon. I don't think they're going to sign 30. That's just not the point. But my point is, there wasn't a need to panic in the spring. We're not in rebuild mode here at Oregon. Take your time. Keep chopping wood. Keep chopping wood on a Jared
I was wondering
Curtis.
if you were going to say it.
Keep chopping wood on a Jared Curtis and a Jackson Cantwell and a Manuel Hanacho. These other guys, Brandon Arrington, right? We're seeing what that's getting. We're starting to see Oregon move towards the top for some of these guys into now what has been Dan Lanning's kind of like money time. His go time has always been what I'm going to call the summer, right? We're transitioning into summer, still a little bit of spring left, but mostly transitioning into summer. I'm not going to sit here and tout that there's going to be a bunch of commitments in May. There's not, but things are going to start trending that direction to where we'll see some commitments in June probably, and even more so in July. And the way you do that is continuing to build those foundation pieces. You don't go from 0 to 60, meaning nothing to a bunch of commitments. Okay. You're just laying that foundation. especially when you're recruiting the caliber of recruits Oregon is. It's a lot of 5 stars, top 100 guys, elite 4 stars, guys that are very good at the positions they play. So, we're starting to make that shift. It's important, I think, for fans to see that, kind of maybe take a deep breath and say, oh, are we done with decommitments? Can we close on a few of these guys? I get it. That's what you want. That's what Dan Lanning wants. And I think we're shifting towards that. We're shifting towards that period where Dan Lanning typically strikes and makes his money and really builds the foundation of this recruiting class, and then kind of tops it off at the end of the year in November, December with a couple more cherries.
This is still going to be a great Oregon class. I think you and I can both say that with confidence, but we can also acknowledge that it's been a rough spring and things haven't really broken Oregon's way like maybe we're used to seeing. But another thing that I think is notable in this pod that we have to touch on, Justin, and I have it as the ticker here, so shout out to me for getting to it 20 minutes into the pod. But we're in the spring evaluation period, which is significant because this means Oregon coaches and coaches all across the country are going to be hitting the road, going to see a lot of these top recruits at school, sometimes going in home for some of these visits. That's big for a guy like Jared Curtis, who I don't think Oregon's going to get on campus as of right now before he comes off the board here in under a week. But you get FaceTime if you're Will Stein with your top quarterback prospect in the 2026 class. So I think that's notable because I was telling you before we hit record here that I was kind of used to the in-home visits being in December, right before the early signing period. Like I remember when I was covering one of the Pac-12 championships games, RIP Pac-12, I was tracking some of these recruits that Mario Cristobal was going to visit in home back in the day. And that's just not where we're at right now. So it's an interesting little wrinkle, but I think it's something that's going to help Oregon in the long run. And then one more update we just have to hit on real quick that I wanted to toss in there was 4-star linebacker Nick Abrams out of Owings Mills, Maryland, McDonough High School, placed Oregon in his top 4 on Tuesday, along with Alabama, Michigan, and Georgia. Oregon's also going to be getting the final official visit there, June 20th. That's the weekend you got to have circled on the calendar if you're a Duck football fan or Duck recruiting fan, because that's right after that. Things are going to be going dead, so no more visits. And then Abrams is coming off the board on July 5th. So seeing that he just took his first trip out to Oregon, I wasn't really surprised to hear that the Ducks are one of his finalists. What I was surprised was that Penn State was cut out of the mix, because I know a lot of McDonough players have gone there in recent years. So overall, a good development for Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, with Oregon, let's call a spade. They're kind of, losing their star or trending away for Talanoa Ely. Great linebacker, and it's a guy Oregon would love to have. But on the heels of maybe not being the team to beat there, you I don't want to say you plug and play and Nick Abrams. That's not fair to him, but that's kind of what you've done. And this is another elite linebacker that, Oregon's, kept themselves in the mix for, much like they've done between Jackson Cantwell and Emmanuel Ihenicho. Like, I just don't think they were ever going to sign both of those guys, but they've done a really good job being in the top 2, top 3 for both of those guys. And just kind of based on how things have the momentum has shifted, or how things have progressed there with each of them, they've kept themselves near the top of the list, and doing that gives them a chance to sign one or the other, I believe. So again, you look at Abrams and you look at Ely, probably won't sign both, but that's okay. If they can get one of these two guys, maybe throw a Hudson Dunn with them, or Bo Jandrio, whatever they like at linebacker to go with them. This doesn't need to be a big linebacker class. It never needed to be a big linebacker class. Just needed to be a couple guys. And I think they're in great shape to do exactly just that. So, like you said, we're transitioning again here in a recruiting, just kind of in our recruiting section. There will be a pretty good sized recruiting visit weekend at Oregon in May. And then you'll see a lot of shift towards Oregon bringing guys in for official visits in June. And again, like you said, we're seeing more spring in-home visits than we've ever seen. And we're seeing more spring official visits than we've ever seen, not just in Oregon. I'm talking about in recruiting nationally. So, things shift in recruiting. They continue to. NIL has made things different. The official visit schedule has made things different. The way the transfer portal is utilized, all these changes, and these coaches are having to adapt to them all on the fly. I think Oregon's, been up there with the elite schools in handling how to, best navigate and maneuver through these changes. And it's up to you and I to kind of relay those changes so that fans can be like, hey, why is it so much different this year? Why are we losing guys in March? Why are guys decommitting? Because it's March. Okay, it's March. You're going to be fine. You and I both know that when, like late June hits and July hits, Dan Lanning goes to work. That's money time for Oregon in recruiting. And then we go, and then we both know again, November, December, they'll make a splash. It might not be 20 guys, but you get a couple big guys there that Oregon either finishes for or makes a really good push for and makes things interesting. So
it's all in the twists and turns, and that's part of what makes following recruiting such a blast. But it also makes you pull your hair out sometimes. But you guys know that Justin and I are here for all of it, and we have you covered on all of it over at ScoopDuck.com. So if you want to find more of Justin, you can follow him at JHopkinsSD. Find me anywhere at Torres Sports. Do us a favor, just take a quick second to subscribe to the ScoopDuck On3 YouTube channel and share the show with another Duck fan. But until next time, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish Podcast.